Everybody, how you doing this morning? You okay? I'm just laughing at my black and white mug just bouncing around on that screen the whole time. It's quite a way to be able to be introduced to each one of you. I'm so glad you had a chance to enjoy that.
Hi, my name is Nicole. This is Justin. You saw our lovely faces. And we are finishing out this series called Mashup. What a mashup is you take two things that you like Jamiroquai and the Bee Gees, and you put their songs together, or Justin and Nicole, and you put us together, and you come up with something new and hopefully even better than you thought you could have. But what we've also done during Mashup is asked for your participation. And so every week during this series, you have texted in questions for the pastors to answer at the end of their sermon. And so we are going to do the same thing this week. I want to give you that phone number as you think of questions. So it is 949-764-1630. And we're going to answer a couple questions here in this room at the end, but we won't get to all of them, obviously. And so we're going to do a Facebook Live tomorrow at 12:30, and we will answer the rest of them, and especially ones that maybe we can't answer today. We're going to research them and come back to you with some good answers, hopefully.
So I've been looking forward to this weekend for a couple of reasons. First, I've never had a chance to speak alongside my friend Nicole, and so I feel like this is a really great moment for us. I also feel like when she said a mashup of Justin and Nicole, I felt like we had to make one of those fake names that they do, right? Like, this is Jacole. Welcome, it's nice to meet you. And then the second,
Nustin.
Yeah, Nustin is a weird one. All the combinations get really odd after that, but I'm really excited for that. And then the second one is we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that's the topic of technology. And I don't know what you think when you first hear that word. I don't know one of the first things that come to your mind, but odds are we're all over the place, right? We could be a lot like this picture that you would see on the screen, that each one of us just kind of gets somewhere in that picture. We find something on that. And so here's the thing, a question I'd love to ask. What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear technology? And in this series, one of the things we've been doing is we've been asking you to text in questions. Nicole and I want to start this a little bit differently today, and we want you to text in an answer. So that number she just gave you, 949-764-1630, 949-764-1630. I'd love and we'd love to hear the first word that comes to mind when you hear technology, and we're going to read off some of the best answers here in a couple minutes.
All right, so while you think about that and take out your phones and text us, do it. Come on, you're allowed to take out your phone. We're talking about technology today. We're going to tell you the first words that came to mind for us. So for me, what came to mind is something that I would be surprised if one of you have heard of before. So if you have, please shout out. Here's what it is. Hatsune Miku. Has anyone heard of Hatsune Miku? Really? Okay, so Hatsune Miku, if you're not, I hope you're not lying to me, is a Vocaloid. So what is a Vocaloid? I didn't know either until my 13-year-old taught me. So here's what Hatsune Miku looks like. She is a Vocaloid. A Vocaloid is a voice synthesizer software that sings. So it's kind of like how Stephen Hawking could speak. They can sing. It's fully programmed. But what makes it different is they are marketed as pop idols who do concerts, and they travel the country doing concerts. And my family went to a Hatsune Miku Vocaloid concert a few weeks ago, and it was weird and wonderful.
So just to be clear, that's not a person. Like, I know you see that on the screen. Someone asked the question. That's not a person. That's like a computer-generated image, which I think is fascinating too. And if you go watch the videos, I mean, it is the craziest concert you've ever seen. So I don't know when Hatsune's coming back, but I'm in, right?
2
that's
years.
like
2 years, people. 2 years, and she comes back.
So what's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear technology? When I was young, my parents gave me a certain amount of money that I could use to buy clothes when I went to school. And I felt like I needed more money to show up to school looking fresh. And so my mom said, if you want more money, you need to go make some. So I went out and started mowing yards and babysitting, and I found I made a lot of money doing that, so I had extra. And I think of this cow-shaped, or this cow-themed box that they sold computers in. Gateway Computers, years ago, they had these retail stores, and one popped up in the city that I lived in. And so I remember my dad took me to Gateway, and I built my first computer, put all the components in, and then took that home. And then I realized over time that I could, unscrew the tower and lift it off, and I could change out the components. I could make it faster. I could make it store more. I could do all that. I could play video games across the world with people. And then I also realized that my mom gets really mad when I play video games across the world with people, because at that time, if you picked up the phone, you would hear the of the internet. And so she was really upset about that. So we installed a second phone line that I also was given the blessing and opportunity to pay for, and then found out that this is like how I progressed in technology. So I've always had this like love for building computers and playing video games, but the first thing that comes to mind is that the Cowbox technology.
Cowbox. All right, so here's some of your responses. We got iPhone, Facebook, Snapchat, Androids, not me, NASA, frustration, internet, exhausted, addicting, imminent doom for the human race, computers, internet, a burden, overwhelmed. We're all over the place.
We are. Like the Terminator just got listed in those text messages right there. So you can see that there's just a differing perspective for each one of us. So as we continue today, what I wanted to do is to give us a common framework for what Nicole and I mean when we say technology. And so here's a dictionary definition of the word technology. We're going to throw it up on the screen for you. Technology is science or knowledge put into practical use to solve problems or invent useful tools. I'll read it one more time because I know that can be a lot to drink in, especially after we just heard like lightsabers. It's science or knowledge put into practical use to solve problems or invent useful tools.
Okay, so technology is not just Vocaloids, computers, iPhones. It is every new science or knowledge put into practical use to solve problems or invent useful tools. And it has been this since the beginning of time, and it is a fundamental part of our life. Technology just happens to be, for us, screens and digital information. But tech is so central to life that we actually have named most of our historical ages after whatever the tech was of that time. So for instance, in the Stone Age, we're going to give you a little history lesson. Here's your summer morning history lesson. In the Stone Age, the development of simple tools made of rocks and stones and the discovery of fire, those were technologies where we share apps that help change our lives, like Shazam or Google Maps. They shared fire. And we may not think of that as technology, but for them, it was. I mean, imagine that you were the grandpa in that situation, right? And your whole life, you have eaten cold or sun-warmed meat. And suddenly your grandkids are walking around with their barbecue, and you're like, you kids don't know how bad I had it. And they don't, because they have new technology.
So this age, it lasted, millions of years, right? The Stone Age was a long period of human history, and then we advanced into the Bronze Age. So take that same fire that was used to cook meats, right? Or wrap bacon around turkey legs and pay $26 at the fair for. Take that same sort of process and then advance it and find that we can actually make creative tools from it. We can start to create things beyond just the fire. And so there's the invention of the wheel, which gave the ability to travel and communicate. But what if we were a tribe, right? Everybody in this room, we're one big tribe. And what we've been used to doing is walking and throwing rocks, right? Our defense was big stone throw. And then all of a sudden, someone shows up with spears and chariots. That is a technological advantage. And we see that throughout history, but we read stories like that when we read the Bible, that this group of people that we follow along in this story, they had those same kind of moments where they would run into far superior technologically advanced societies, and they were used to doing it this other way. That was the Bronze Age.
Okay, so the next was the Iron Age, and each age gets a little bit shorter. So in the Iron Age, we figured out that we could take ore, which was this really commonly found element here in the world, and we could turn it into iron and make the same things that we could make out of bronze before. But bronze was something you couldn't find everywhere. And so the Iron Age was really about access, which is a lot of what we are dealing with now too. Suddenly there's way more access to these technologies that only a few people used to have. And so whereas only one country would have these weapons, now in every town you have a blacksmith. And this lasted about 1,000 years. And here's what we want you to know about this. Technology has been about survival and power and life throughout the ages. The people with the new technology, they had the upper hand. Their tribe, their country was the powerful one. Like Justin said, so the Israelites in the Old Testament, that's who we follow along their story. They over and over and over again run into people who have better technology than they do, and they get overpowered. Now for us, maybe the most common way we see this happen is in every sci-fi movie ever. Why are we scared of aliens? They have way better tech, right? So we're scared of them.
So why this history lesson? It's 9:49 in the morning. You may be surviving after a long weekend and you're going, I just came to a history class. Why do we want to introduce some history in this part? We wanted to be able to give perspective. What we wanted to do is say that technology has been a part of life forever. There's real life consequences, there's real life benefits, but the thing that we're dealing with right now is it's not just because life is detached from computers or detached from screens. We're dealing with a different way that it's evolving. We're seeing advance at a far faster speed than millions of years or thousands of years or all these processes we've gone through. So what I want to do is I want to show you this screen that shows the advance in technology over the last 500 years. So if you start on the far left and you look at the printing press, just look how slow technology was advancing over those hundreds of years. And then look what happened when we landed on the moon. right? As soon as we landed on the moon, everything changed. And now all of a sudden we're skyrocketing and we're starting to experience that. We're speeding up. We're seeing the printing press to the telescope to the light bulb, phone, internet, Facebook, Amazon Prime that can deliver something to you today, right? We see the way that this is all changing. And these new technologies are not only changing our daily life, but the way that they're advancing is getting closer and closer in time.
Right, so where are we now? We are in the digital age or the information age. And every day there is a new app, a new medical procedure, a new technology that we need to know about and we need to integrate into our lives. And if you know about it, you're winning. And if you're not, you're falling behind. And so you may feel like you're getting hit by a tidal wave of more information and more technology. And that's because we are. This is happening in real time where it's speeding up and speeding up. And our analog bodies and minds, because we're the first generations to ever really deal with this at this speed. You look at the difference between my parents, myself, and my kids. There's a huge difference between what they dealt with, what I dealt with, and now what my 9 and 13-year-old are dealing with. And so we are met with these questions that we don't know how to answer yet. Things like, do I use it more so I don't fall behind and miss out on something? Or do I use it less so I don't fry my brain or get depressed?
Now, most likely, nothing has had a more significant impact in your life than this little thing, right? That it's changed the way we experience our day-to-day. But unlike early computers, the way that the cell phone networks are advancing, the way mobile technology is getting quicker, we see this accelerated growth that's happening faster and faster and faster, and it's changing year over year. So here's what we'd love to do. It's a little screen exercise we're going to have together. So if you have an Apple device, we're going to put this on the screen. If you have an Android device, we're going to put this on the screen. If you have another one of those, I don't know how to help there, but hopefully you can track along with the process. So here's what we're going to have you do. As you take out your phone, bust it out of your pocket, swipe to open, whatever you got to do, make your face unlock it, however you get there. I'd love for you to click on Settings. This is the Apple version. Click on Battery, the little green icon. You'll see battery usage pop up, and there's a little clock that's in the right corner. If you tap on that, select last 7 days, it's going to show you a picture. If you have an Android device, click on Settings, Device, Battery or Settings, and then click on Power and Battery Use. And so here's what it's going to show you. It's going to show you some time. It's going to show you apps you use. Now here's the reality, and to be fair, this isn't a way that it shows your actual app usage. In order for us to do that, you'd have to download a third-party software, and we have to get into that. But here's the thought process. The more you use an application, the more of your battery it uses, and so by default, it would cause us to say, so that is an application you use a lot. And Nicole and I are in full transparency mode this weekend, and so we took screenshots of each one of the ways that we've been using apps over the last 7 days, and here's a side-by-side look at Nicole and I's battery use that we'll throw up on the screen for you. So when you look at that, you can see the two sides, and here's just the biggest question I have. It's a way for us to have a little fun and to laugh a little bit. If you look at Nicole's side, the clock application has 37 minutes spent on it. Now, I don't know how you spend 37 minutes looking at the clock, but this was my first question. Right? I was like, that's fascinating to me. And then the second one, for me, and I need to get this out there because I think someone's going to think it, you see like RC phone on the left side of my column, and you're like, did Justin install a burner phone on his? Like, what kind of side hustle is he running, right? This is not it. We have like business lines here at the church. That's the application we use, so you could tell I was making a lot of corporate calls this week. Life of the pastor. Welcome to it. All right, but those are just two fun observations on the front.
I really recommend doing this. I think this was really eye-opening for me to see how often I have things open. So also, full disclosure, so we did this about a week and a half ago, and so we've had time to adjust what we were doing with our phones since showing this. One of the things that got me is it showed that I had been on my home screen for like 2 hours or something the first time we did this, and I thought, how compulsive must I be about checking my phone and then doing nothing with it, just like looking at the home screen and then putting it down again. So sad, so I stopped doing that, and so you don't see it on this one.
Home screen and the clock, right? But then I didn't know we got to edit our app, so if you look at mine, 2.5 hours on the home screen, so I guess I get to be the guilty one. She got to make her life right before we put it public, so just sidebar.
Yeah, but look at it. If Justin went like super speed for you, if that made you feel like you don't know how to use technology, because Justin's like, touch here, and then go here, and then do the thing, come outside and we'll show you how to do it, because it really is helpful on figuring out what you're using and what is seductive to you in your phone that makes you keep going back to it, that maybe you don't want to be coming back to it that much. Because what can happen for us in a moment like this is we can feel bad, right, about those numbers. We can feel bad about what we're choosing to do with our lives. And whether we're inside the church or outside the church, we can be made to feel like either we don't know what we're doing with technology or we're using it wrong. And that is not what we want to do today. Today, we want to put technology in perspective. That's why the history lesson, that's why all of this. We want to put it in perspective so that we can use it and combine it with our faith for the best impact possible. See, technology is a tool, whatever the technology is that we're facing. And in every age of human history, that has been true. And we are still human. We still have the same directives from God. We still have the same things we're supposed to do with our lifetimes, whether we're encountering fire, iron, or iPhones. So I want to start in the very, very beginning, in Genesis 1, where God is giving us directives, and he's creating everything. And this is how we can interact with technology, whatever that technology is in our lives or our children's lives. This is God speaking. He says, "Now let us conceive a new creation, humanity made in our image, fashioned according to our likeness, and let us grant them authority over all the earth." So God did just that. He created humanity in his image, created them male and female. Then God blessed them and gave them this directive: "Be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth. I make you trustees of my estate, so care for all creation." Now, on first read, most people go, God just told us to make babies. But that is not all this says. When you look at the theology, meaning the study of the Bible, most people say there are two things that God gives us as our directives here in these verses. Our job is to create and to care. That's it. Our job is to create and to care. And every piece of technology we interact with is a thing to help us create and to care. So we can just start right away by asking ourselves, are we using technology correctly? This tool correctly? Is it in line with our directives? Are we using it to create and care? Or are we doing what people have done throughout history, which is use it to get more power, or to distract ourselves, or to avoid something? As individuals and as a church, we want to approach technology not with fear or control or obsession, as people have often done, but with responsibility and with creativity. Throughout each age, the church has been famous for how well it has been a leader in the advances of technology, and absolutely what a terrible job the church has done with technology, both in putting it down and with abusing it. But we have done a good job too, right? That conviction of what God has given us, these unbelievable minds, the best technology in the world is still our brain. And God has given us those brains so that we can create and we can care. But it is equally true that the church has been a critic and an abuser, at times in the most horrible ways. And we as people, we like to blame technology. We say, fire is just so dangerous, and the internet is just so seductive, and it's my iPhone's fault that I'm on the clock and I'm on my home screen all the time. There's a tension for us to realize that this right here, this tool, or whatever technology we're working with, it's the same one we'll use to create and to care, and it's the same one we will use to destroy, obsess, escape, and control. But what if we had the humility and the perspective to see that the tools are not the problem? That what if they just magnify something deeper inside of us?
So I love technology, and in 2004, this song came out that I find myself singing all the time. It was shown in this movie, and this guy was at his wedding, and he said, "I love technology," and then he started singing about his wife, but he said, "And then I still love technology." And so I find myself singing that. Like I told Nicole, I got a new electric toothbrush, and I thought it was fascinating. And I was like, wow, look at the way it brushes. And it is true about all these different areas of my life. And my wife would tell you, this is an area where I'm high maintenance about. Like, this is one area of my life where I'm really finicky and weird when it comes around technology. And here's a tension I face, and it's the same tension that you face. It's one that as we grapple with technology, we're all here. The tension is this: how do I master technology and not be mastered by it? How do I allow this science or this knowledge that is put into practical use that helps me to solve problems, invent useful tools, care and create? How do I use that rather than letting this technological creation master my time, master my attention, master my focus, master my relationships, and pull me into areas that I don't want to be in or put me in a direction that I'm trying to steer away from? Now, a question that gets asked in this area, but it expands far beyond technology, is the bigger question in everything. It's this question. It's, how do I master myself? Now, this same question has been faced in each age of human history, and it's the one that we'll have to answer for ourselves. If we answer this question first, then we're going to get perspective about everything. We're going to be able to answer all the really big questions of life, because in mastering ourselves, we can master anything. And now we can have conversations about technology. We can have conversations about food. We can have conversations about sex. And each one of them, the fundamentals of life, are going to be answered because we answer the question, how do I master myself?
Right, so we're going to start with this question, how do I master myself? Then we'll move on to the how do I master technology, not be mastered by it. But this question, how do I master myself, is something that each of us has to answer for ourselves, and no one ever reaches the end of answering this question. So we are going to speak from personal experience and Bible study and hope that it helps you do the same thing for yourselves.
And this is just one of the biggest questions in human history, right? Like, how do I master myself? Oh, great. Bow to your sensei, right? We're all there. So if you joined us a couple of weeks ago, you heard Andrew and Jorge share this verse. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, and here's what it says. It says, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. And when we think about technology, we can all agree that it's incredibly beneficial, right? There's a lot of things about technology that are unbelievable advances, that are unbelievable helpful. We can also agree that there's a lot that's permissible, or there's a lot that's been allowed. And we've also seen that there's plenty of people who have found themselves get caught up because they could not master themselves, right? They found themselves being mastered by it, not mastering themselves in it. And we've learned and moved away from what is actually beneficial. So when we look at like what's permissible, right, and we also look at like what's beneficial, what can end up happening is we can start to feel like this. It's a little verse from a wisdom book of the Bible called Proverbs. It says it like this: like a city whose walls are broken through. Right? It's that tidal wave that each one of us is feeling, like a city whose walls are broken through. The advances that are hard to keep up with, right, is the internet, are the applications, is the access. Now, this verse is 1,500 years old, right? It's older than each one of those things. And here's the way that this verse ends. I'd love for you to see it with us. It says this: like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. So can we all agree together that we need walls, right? We all need boundaries. We all need places where we can have a wall that doesn't get broken through, ones that can bend but they may not break, ones that allow us to feel like we're not being overrun by this tidal wave. And this is our step towards self-control, or our step towards self-mastery. And all of us today, we don't need to take 20 steps, right? We can take a step that points us in a better direction. We can take one decision, allow us to point it in the way that we want it to go. So what Nicole and I are going to do is just share a couple of practices that we've put in place that are helping us to find self-mastery in this area.
All right, so for me, if you are like me, I am someone who, I don't love self-discipline. I don't love having to set new boundaries. I'm not great at choosing to do the best thing in any given moment. And so I have had to work really, really hard to put walls and structure in my life. And so I have boiled this down to just a series of simple questions that I ask myself to help me get through the day in the best possible way. And the first one is, who am I? Meaning, who do I want to be? Who has God called me to be? And that is someone who lives those directives of being creative and caring. And I start with that. And realizing that I am a finite person with only a limited number of days, and I want to make my best choices possible. So that number one, who am I? And I always come back to that. Next is, what are my options in any given moment? And it's true, we've got more and more and more options. But looking at them, just frankly, helps me then decide what to do next. Which options are going to best line up with who I am and who I want to continue to be? And then my last question is, so how did that go? And that's really it. It's the who am I, what are my values, who do I want to be, what are my options, which one matches up best, and then how did that go? And I know that seems really simple, but here's what that looks like for me on a daily basis. So I try to remind myself, I am a child of God. I'm alive for a purpose, and that purpose is to love God and love other people as I love myself. I want to live like I'm a member of God's family, and that family has rules and guidelines, and I can go back and find those rules and guidelines in places like Galatians 5 or Romans 8 or the Sermon on the Mount, and I can remind myself who I am and who I want to be, and then I can pray constantly for God to help me, and I can ask other people into that process. But I can do all that prep work. I'm still going to face those moments of choice, right? Those moments of what am I going to do in this moment? And if you've ever done any study on habits, you know that in any moment you're faced with this 3-step cue, response, reward. Have you ever heard this? So you have a cue, something that just triggers your brain to have a response. And so you do something. Sometimes you don't even think about it before you do it. And then you get some kind of reward. So for me, a cue for me to want to go on Facebook is that my hands are empty. And so my hands are empty and I think, oh, and I pick it up and I start looking at it before I've even really had a chance to think about it. I've already had a response. And my reward is seeing pictures of your babies or your vacation, and little hits of dopamine come and I feel good. And 2 hours has gone by and I don't know what I did with my life. So what I did to get between that cue and response is I moved my Facebook app a couple screens over and I put my Bible app on the front page, so I literally have to scroll past the Bible in order to get to Facebook. And it has helped with stopping my cue response before I can get to the reward I don't want and get the reward I do want. And then the last thing I try to do every single day, at least at night, if I miss it at night, I'll do it in the morning, is this thing called a prayer of examine. And I made a little cheat sheet for you guys. You can take a picture of this. We'll also put it online when we do the Facebook Live. We're going to do that, remember, tomorrow at 12:30. But this is an old Christian practice, this prayer of examine. And sometimes they look a little bit different, but this is the basics of it. I sit for a minute. I recognize that I am in the presence of God. I look at my day with gratitude, and then I review my day. I ask myself some questions. And then, after that, I reconcile to move forward and try to do this every day. As someone who is not easily self-disciplined, this helps me master my own choices in a way that nothing else has. And this is important to me. But I still make mistakes and I still have to look at it. So for instance, we were just on vacation, my family and I, my husband, my 9-year-old and my 13-year-old. And we were in San Francisco. We were waiting for our table at dinner and we're sitting down, and without really thinking about it, my husband and myself and our 13-year-old who has a phone are all on our phones, looking at them, not talking to each other. And my 9-year-old goes, "Hey, can we talk to each other?" Shame on me. And it was so good. So when I did my prayer of examine later in the day, I had something to look at and reconcile and move forward with. And this is how I have been able to slowly over time get better and better at being the person God has called me to be.
So one of the practices I added into my life is just to ask this question, like whatever this habit is, whatever this thing is, does it make me like blank more, fill in the blank with something? Does it make me love my family more? Does it make me love people more? Does it make me love Jesus more? And you heard me say a little bit earlier, like one of the things that's been true for my life from the beginning is I love playing video games. So I can remember as a 4-year-old, I think, renting a Nintendo Entertainment System from like Blockbuster. And shout out to there's only one Blockbuster left in Bend, Oregon. Hold on, Bend, right? We need you. But that one, I remember renting it from it. And we rented RoboCop because that was like the only game that was still available. And I can remember playing video games for the first time and saying, this is amazing. And I progressed in every era of Justin Chandler's life. I've been able to follow that. Now, when we started getting close to getting married, we needed some extra money for our wedding. So I decided to sell all of my video game systems, single tier, right? So sold all those and got away from them. But then what I've told my wife is if I have this moment where I say I want to play video games, like that's a tell, right? That's something for you that you need to know, like something's happening in my life. It's something that there's a conversation I'm trying to avoid. There's something I don't want to think about. My day's been way too busy, and all I want to do is like fill it with more busyness. There's something happened that really frustrated me, so I just want to go online and like lob fake grenades at something. Like there's something that's happening that you need to know. I'm trying to pull away from it, and that's one of those things that first needs to pop up into your brain. When I say that, there's something we need to talk about. And then the second one is this like movie I like to play in my brain. And I don't know how it started or why I started playing movies, but it was my way of looking ahead in life. And I have this vision for my life when I'm like 80 years old. And I imagine that I'm like 80 and I get to have an office, right? I just feel like that would be a really cool way to make it, or like a book room, right? That I just get to have all these different things that are stored in there. And what I started doing a couple years ago is I had these moments in a really tough season that I wanted to remember what God was doing in the midst of that, in the really hard times. And so I started writing down every day something from the Bible that I was reading, something that I had thought about from that reading, a way that it applied to my life that day, and then I wrote down a little prayer at the end, right? So it's just this really simple process. Read something in the Bible, write down what you thought about what you just read, what does it mean for your life today, and then some prayer for asking God to help. And that day-to-day process led to a week-to-week journey, became month-to-month, year-to-year, and all of a sudden these little writings became these books. And then there's this shelf that I can look at where I've got a bunch of these books stored together. And so when I imagine myself being 80, I imagine I just have this bookshelf that's filled with them. And I have grandchildren who run into the office that I'm sitting at, right? It smells of rich mahogany. And as the grandchildren run in and they're like, what are those? Not like the internet meme that's like, what are those? But like, what are those books that are there? And I get to tell them the story, right? Like, this is my story. This is what has been happening in my life year over year, decade after decade. And this is some of the things that God has been doing in my life. This is some of the things that God has revealed and God has showed. Now, I intentionally gravitate towards technology all the time. So you heard Nicole say that she was out of town on vacation, and we had this message to share this weekend. And so we were working on this through like a Google Doc, and we were seeing live updates. It was amazing. And yet in this one practice, I'm like, I'm going to intentionally revert away from that. I'm going to use moleskins and really great pens, and I'm going to, open it up and hear the crack of paper, and then I'm going to be able to put that thing that's stored there and be able to see it. And so those two practices have been super helpful for me.
I really like picturing Grandpa Justin. Do you have a long beard?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I go Santa Claus at that period of my life, or the beard is to help me look from not being so young, right? So I don't know if I get older and I'm going to make myself look younger. Like, wow, Grandpa's 85, but he looks 42. He's really holding it together. Strong genetics. Right? I don't know what it is. So.
Perfect, thank you. Just picturing it with the mahogany.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a little bit of how we have tackled self-mastery in our lives. And don't let it stop with us. The point is to show you examples for you and for you to continue to refine your own process. But with that as the foundation, then how do we go about mastering technology specifically so that it doesn't master us? So we have put together a list of 6 technology in its proper place statements, because technology is meant to help us create and to care, and it should help us have a huge impact in the world in a positive way. And so these are 6 things that we think put technology in its proper place. So the first one is technology is in its proper place when it starts great conversations. It's out of its proper place when it prevents us from talking with and listening to one another. So for example, when we were sitting waiting for dinner and my poor 9-year-old is just sitting there while we're on our phones, what we did instead was we would take turns showing each other our favorite videos. And so we would go, here's my favorite video, and we'd laugh about it and talk about it, and then the next person would pick theirs, and we would laugh about it and talk about it. Or another one we do when we're on long car rides is we'll play family music share, and we each pick a song on Spotify that we want to share with each other, and then we all sit and listen to it, and then the next person goes. And it's a way to start conversations with technology rather than ignore each other.
So here's the second statement. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us bond with the real people we have been given to love. It's out of its proper place when we end up bonding with people at a distance, like celebrities, whom we will never receive love from in return. So an easy one for this week, my son Micah, he's 5 years old. He started a hip-hop dance class. And so he's just like a dancer, and he gravitates towards hip-hop music, so we felt like we should just like pursue this. So we put him in this class, and we've got some unbelievable videos of him dancing. And we have friends that we've had a chance to share life with, and they know Micah really well, and they've seen some of his dance moves. And so it was really cool to be able to put this video on the internet and to see like him dancing and showing off like his great dance moves. And then for everybody to be able to respond and say like, I can't believe you guys are doing this, it's so unbelievable. It's not that moment where I find myself looking at celebrities dancing, right? Or I find myself trying to see other people doing cool things. It's a way for us to experience unbelievable love with people at a distance as if they were right there with us.
All right, third one. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us take care of the fragile bodies we inhabit. It's out of its proper place when it promises to help us escape the limits and vulnerabilities of those bodies altogether. This is one I think is really dangerous for us. This is one where the extreme is porn. It's so much easier and so much less complicated to deal with people through a screen than to deal with real humans in our lives. Like the good version is I can order food from Amazon Prime and have it delivered to my house in an hour. That's amazing. You also can sit on your computer all day eating Doritos and drinking Mountain Dew and destroy yourself.
Yeah, that was a bad, I wasn't prepared for that. But it's like shots fired at Mountain Dew. Okay, so technology is in its proper place when it helps us acquire skill and mastery of domains that are the glory of human culture. So think sports, music, arts, cooking, writing, accounting, the list could go on and on. When we let technology replace the development of skill with passive consumption, something's gone wrong. So think about it like this. There's a trend amongst young children that they're watching other kids build toys. Like they watch YouTube videos of other kids playing with toys and building toys. That's a weird thing that we've gotten into, that we're not building toys anymore, we're watching other people build. Yep. The same thing happens with adult men, like when we play fantasy football, right? There's a way for us to compose a team, build a team, compete with our team, and argue with people about the team. And then we can get mad at people who are actually playing the game of football and not performing up to us, but we won't go out into the yard and run, right? You can start to see that those are some of the ways that it creates a little bit of an imbalance.
All right. Technology is in its proper place when it helps us cultivate awe from the created world we are part of and responsible for stewarding. It's out of its proper place when it keeps us from engaging the wild and wonderful natural world with all of our senses. So I love Google Earth. I love being able to zoom in and look at different cities in Italy or look at Yosemite. It's another thing if I never actually go to Yosemite because I can just look at it online and it's great. Look, I can see Half Dome. There's something that we miss when we're not willing to go into the dirt and the air and get ourselves to those actual places. We live in a virtual world that is just so much simpler and easier, and we can do it from our home, but we're meant to be connected to the place that God made us.
All right, last one, deep breath. We're gonna get some questions after this, so here's the last one. Technology is in its proper place only when we use it with intention and care. If there's one thing I've discovered about technology is that it doesn't stay in its proper place on its own. Much like my children's toys and stuffed creatures and minor treasures, it finds its way underfoot all over the house and all over our lives. If we aren't intentional and careful, we'll end up with quite an extraordinary mess. So we don't have a playroom at our house, and so our 5-year-old has turned it into the play living room. And so when I come home, often there's random Legos or Transformers or cars, and it is a minefield for bare feet, right? We all recognize that. And it is just like a pit of destruction. And it can be the same way for us with technology. If we don't create boundaries, if we don't create walls, it can feel like our life is running out of control, and everywhere we turn, there's some kind of mine to avoid. But if we use intention with how we're using it, if we use care with how we're using it, then all of a sudden technology becomes an unbelievable gift and benefit to our lives.
All right, so we want to answer a couple of the questions that you have asked, and then we'll answer more of them tomorrow at 12:30. So the first one is, what are your thoughts on Christians using online dating to meet their future spouse? So I have been married for almost 20 years, so I feel like I have no right to answer what is like a minefield of life right now. But someone asked this question last night as well, and so I didn't answer it last night. I wanted to go and talk to my friends who are single and are having to wrestle through, do I use online dating? Do I not? Which sites do I use? It's painful. And so here's what they said, that there are pros and cons to both, that there is a pro to it because it opens up your world, right? And it allows you to sort through people in a way that you can't do in regular life. But it will consume your time, the dangers are real, and so you've got to go really, really slowly with it and be up for the amount of energy that it will actually take. And it may or may not be for anyone. There is no right answer to that. But to not let it create a pressure that you need to somehow hurry up and find some person because the whole world is available to you.
I think the assessments and tools that are given for it are really like unbelievable, that you get to have personality profiles and you get to be matched up in some way. I think that that's awesome. Some of it takes out the thrill of trying to figure that out, right? That you could find that you do have a really good match with a person, and then you've got this opposite attracts balance that's hanging out there. And I would also say, again, I met my wife. We were standing in a church really similar to this one, and we met in the lobby. That's not where, the aha moment happened. It took a little while for that to come through. So I feel like I'm outside of it. I've had a chance to see a lot of friends see unbelievable success, right? There's even small group leaders in our church who are about to celebrate 10 years of marriage, and they met on an online dating site, and they are unbelievably matched, unbelievably happy. They are so in love. So I think that that's really great. And then we can also say that there's a lot who have seen a lot of the really dangerous consequences and some of the moments where it didn't work out like they wanted to, just like dating and relationships are, right? So my relationship advice would be some of the best things in life take time, so we can't accelerate a time-oriented process to fall in love because the assessments work. We would just want to use the same kind of balance, the same kind of integrity, the same kind of concern that we would use when dating a person in a coffee shop. And then I would also just encourage you to open that conversation up to more people, allow more people with wisdom, insight, influence into your life to have a chance to speak to it. Don't let the anonymity or just the computer screen version of it keep you from including other real-life people in your world into the dating process.
Hey, Justin.
Hey.
How has the church used technology to tell the world about Jesus?
That is a great question. I'll start at the earliest parts. So some of the stories we read were about like the invention of roads, right? So if you read the story of the Bible, this group of people that was living in one place, they were conquered, and then the country that conquered them spread them out around the world, right? So they were in all kinds of places in the known world. And then another group of people came in, the Romans, and then they built like roads to connect all these different cities. Well, then when the story of Jesus started being told, what we see is they used those very same people that were displaced all around the world, and those same use of roads, it was a way for them to tell the story of Jesus in the fastest way possible. Like it spread faster than literally like almost any message into that day. And then now you look at even say like radio and television. I mean, Christianity is being broadcast around the world. Now, some of it we would say like, hey, family business, I don't know if we want that being broadcast. Like some of you guys are putting crazy out there for us. But the reality is that people are having a chance to hear about Jesus in ways that have been closed to Christian people, have been closed to the voice and the message. And I think that that's unbelievably cool.
Right, and then I see people here, there are people within our church that I've seen create these vibrant, beautiful Facebook groups where people are cheering each other on in their Christianity, they're cheering each other on in their marriages or their dating, and we're able to be there for each other all of the time in ways that we couldn't be if we only got together. I know for me, there was a time that I felt distanced and disenfranchised from the church. And I don't know if you've ever felt like that, but there were times that I just didn't feel like I could connect to a church in 3D life. And what I found were these communities of people online who were in the same place, who loved Jesus and did not want to lose their faith, but were struggling with it. And they helped me keep my faith and make it stronger than it was before. And so there are beautiful things that we can do for each other. Just being able to text each other and check in, or create a group where we're all together and we can cheer each other on. There are things that we can all do to spread love and faith and Jesus in ways that we never imagined before. There are people with YouTube channels that will blow your mind, podcasts that will help you feel better about your Christianity and help you learn more about Jesus. And we can also be creators. Like we said with the Iron Age, that was that time of access. Do not be just a consumer of what's being spread through technology. You are meant to also be someone who is spreading that. So find ways to do that. All right, you want to pick one? Last one?
Yeah, no pressure. Well, so since we're talking about technology and faith, there's a conversation around, when should you introduce technology to teenagers, or how should you introduce it to kids? I feel like that's a really big question. We're going to be really excited to get in that tomorrow. But since we're mashing up faith and technology, I feel like the best one would be, so in what ways can technology increase or distract our faith?
So just like anything, we like to make idols of things, and we treat them like that's where God is. So God is not in technology. And at any point I start to find that I'm looking to technology to make me feel better, that's when I need to put it away. And so, because like I said, I will pick up Facebook and be on it looking for something inspirational, looking for something one of you posted, and look for those moments where, oh good, someone put scripture and that helped me feel better. And then half an hour later, I'm still on it, and I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore. And so I need to put that away and go be outside, go pray, go find a way to let go of the stuff that's starting to pull me in and reconnect to the fact that God and I have a direct connection, and I do not need anything to help me connect with God.
So I think one of the ways that it helps is, I think what Nicole said, even with YouTube channels and ways that we can connect, like I have a chance to see what God is doing in the lives of my friends across the country and across the world. And that's unbelievably attractive to me. Like it's this way that I get to say, I know that person and look what God's doing. Or I've been to that church and look how God's doing that. And I think that's unbelievably cool to be a part of. One of the ways that it distracts me is if I need to focus, technology can be one of the worst things for me, right? So if I sit down and say, hey, in this area time, like I want to focus, I want to read something from the Bible, I want to try to find a way that God can use it in my life today, all of a sudden it sounds like my phone just starts beeping about things, right? Ding, ding, and I'll be like, all right, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to dial in, I'm going to focus. Ding, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to dial, I'm going to focus. Ding, and I'm like Pavlov's dog, right? All of a sudden I'm just like, I can't stop myself. And the do not disturb button is an unbelievable gift, right? Swipe up, and then the world is quiet. But one of the things I really like to do is I just like to give technology a resting place. Like, hey, you can go stay over there. And in this moment, I just want it to be me, like an actual Bible that I hold with my hands, a piece of paper I can write on, and just quiet. And I don't get a lot of quiet in life with toddlers and, with traffic. That moment of, wow, this is like quiet right now is unbelievably refreshing and cool. So that's how I would answer that question. So as we wrap up today, we said we're going to be on Facebook Live tomorrow, so there's plenty more questions. You can still text them in, and we'll still be receiving them through the night. We're going to answer some more live. If you jump on live with us, you can ask us questions there. We'll answer that. If you're new to the Crossing, or if you've been around for a while, one of the things that we've been about is our church has been helping people say yes to Jesus for 29 years. And what we don't want to do is to miss in this moment or to feel like, hey, that was a nice talk, and we're out of here. We recognize that for some of you, this could be your very first time coming into a church, and you just got hit with the tag team of Nicole, and you're like, I don't know where this is landing at, right? You could be feeling that way. But we want to be able to introduce you to the God of the universe who is able to give his life for you, just even to care and cultivate your own soul. We want to give you an opportunity to say yes there. For some of you, you say, hey, I'm struggling with self-control. I'm finding some areas in my life that are really hard for me, and I just would want God to help me. We've said this prayer that if we need help, that just to ask and God gives it, right? So it may not be technology, but you'd be like, man, if God's giving out some self-control help, I'll take some of that. Or you could be in the room and say, like, hey, technology is a thing for me. Like I recognize from family or friends, we've been having some conversations, and I want to take a step to change that. We're going to give you those 3 ways to say yes. All right, so can we do this together? Can we all stand up to our feet? Nothing magical about standing up to your feet, but you get to stretch it out now. All right, so stretch it out. I like taking deep breaths because I realize I'm really busy if I haven't, breathed in a while. All right, so go ahead and take a deep breath. Right, breathe it in. All right, and I'd love for you to bow your head and for you to close your eyes, not because there's anything magical about that or I'm going to pull some trick. I just feel like this is a moment for us to reflect, not only on this week, but also in this last hour. And so if you're in the room today and you're saying, man, I want to say yes to Jesus. Either today you're saying yes for the very first time, or you're saying today I want to make a comeback. I want to start my relationship with God fresh and new today. If that's you, could you throw your hand up real high? Because I want to be able to pray for you today. So if that's you and you're saying yes to Jesus, either first time or you're making a comeback. Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for lifting your hands up. That's so awesome. Thank you. All right, if you're in the room today and you're saying, hey, I'm struggling with self-control. It may be in the area of technology or maybe in another area that you're like, I'm having a hard time doing the right thing or stopping in this area. Could you lift your hand up real high too? Because I'm going to pray for you. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for lifting your hands up. Thank you. All right, into the last group, if you're saying, hey, I want to take a step. I want to get some mastery in the area of technology. I don't want that to be a struggle for me anymore. Go ahead and slip your hand up too, because we're going to be able to pray for you. Awesome. All right, let's all pray together, and then we'll meet up outside. So Jesus, I'm just so thankful for today. I'm so thankful that the God of the universe, he gave care to our souls. Right? He gave us the ability to cultivate on the planet. He allowed us to be able to create. And God, each one of us is one of your creations. And so God, there's some in this room who said yes to Jesus. The God who looked at the planet that he created and he cared for, he didn't just stand off at a distance, but he put himself in it to be able to save each one of us. And so God, we want to celebrate that heaven got a little bit bigger today. That there were people in this room who said yes, and this church that's been doing it for 29 years, God, you did it again here today. And we don't want to miss that. God, we don't want to miss that some of us are asking for help today. We're asking, God, would you help us get self-control in an area that we haven't been able to? And you promise that, God, as your spirit lives in us, that you'll help us to have self-control, that one of the fruits of knowing you is that. And so, God, I pray that you would give us strength where we don't have it yet. And God, in the area of technology, God, whether it's a struggle or it's something that's an incredible benefit, God, I pray that we would use the tools in front of us, not only to bring great benefit to our lives, but that, God, we would make a difference in the world with the tools that you've given us and the one life and the one set of days that we have to live. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, you guys.
See you outside.